What is going on, everybody? Welcome to week 13 of Look Who's Chalking. This is when I like to say when you're probably eliminated from your season long. But I think we've been doing this long enough where season long takes a major backseat to DFS. There was the transition of power, the baton handoff, and now it's all about DFS, especially coming off probably like the flagship episode of Look Who's Chalking. You saw the culmination of years of kind of refining what we were doing here. And it all kind of came together in the form of a Chalkaroach, the highest scoring non-quarterback on the slate. Probably the proudest I've been to get that out there. I know I received a couple texts from people who said they had awful lineups, but the Chalkaroach got them into the cash. I know Gary had a couple of high cashes up in the millionaire and everything. It was a good week for the both of us. It was one of those weeks where we won. It's a tease because you don't want to be a greedy piece of garbage. We cashed, but we didn't cash up near the top where one of those will clear everything, will clear weeks worth for you. But it was good that we were both on. We even talked about how we both really liked Josh Allen, and he was the number one scoring player on the slate. So Gary, I'm assuming that you, like me, are excited to take some of that momentum because, it's kind of like baseball. When you're cold, you're swinging at awful pitches just to try to differentiate from other people. But when you're feeling it, you're kind of moving on to the right guys, off the right guys. And I don't know, maybe this will be, it only took 13 weeks, but we're here.
Yeah, man. I said it a couple of weeks ago. I'm a true believer in, playing well and staying hot and all that. And, like anything else, gambling or DFS or sports, you go through ups and downs and peaks and valleys. And, you're playing really well right now. I was happy to get the little bit of a monkey off my back. First time I put in a good amount of lineups in a while and played pretty well and had to give you your props, my friend. I bring out the Andy Francess merch for the Chalkaroach plant, an all-timer.
And it went straight through our text before this game where you were talking about Zach Charbonnet receptions. I go, why don't you just take the alt over on reception yards? I feel like he might take one for a long distance. That's exactly what he did. So, as they say, sniffing is believing. A couple of different things about that. A couple of things about that last slate. I'm sure you saw, because I saw you, I think maybe like the post that I put out there, how a ton of the projections were wrong. And I was talking about this on the show that I do on Odd Shopper. And I said this even when we used to work together. Every company, including our old companies, new companies, they should hire a regular guy, a Joe Blow, to come in and tell you what he thinks. Because how could those projections miss that Derrick Henry, everybody wanted to play him against? We talked about that last week on the show. And then, obviously, Jonathan Taylor, people are going to be scared with the looming Bucs defense. That's chalk sports guy thought. And I don't know how those algorithms missed it.
It's a little peek behind the curtain with football ownership, at least the way we do it at Establish the Run, is obviously it's first run algorithmically, and then there's a lot of manual edits. And this is where groupthink for sharp players who are heads in their projection every single day can kind of impact things a little bit too much, right? Like Jonathan Taylor had an excellent projection across the industry. But you and I can just look at that game and be like, we didn't want to take running backs against the Bucs all year. And he ended up being okay because I think he scored twice, right? And it could have ended up being a much bigger game. But that was variance, right? They got down to the goal line. Minshew could have had a much bigger day. We were into Minshew. That was variance. He still was fine. Wasn't optimal because there was the Chalkaroach and Bijan and Ramondre and all these guys and Derrick Henry that were right there. But so it's this group think a little bit when we have, because the projection systems are that good. The non-ownership projections, the regular projection systems, they really are that good for your company, for my company, for the most of the big hitters in the industry. So when you're, literally it's your full-time job, 60 plus hours a week to be refining these projections, figuring out what kind of content you're putting around these projections, you become a little bit of a slave to the numbers. And that is going to ultimately kind of trickle into ownership projections. And that's why there are times and there are weeks where football ownership projections are way out of whack, and this was one of them. I'm glad that I think you and I had a great finger on this slate, right? Like, it wasn't just the Josh Allen and Chalk Roach thing. We spoke about a lot of guys. I know you and I have been talking, patting the Pat Fryermuth drum for a couple of weeks, just saying like, hey, he's still too cheap. Eventually he's going to get there. That guy had the most receivers on the slate, right? We like Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud. Like, we like that game. That game hit in a big way.
Yeah, we singled that one out as part of the earlier slate, and then obviously highlighted and especially we highlighted the Bills stacks because how many of those were available. So yeah, that was definitely, definitely we were just right on the ball with so many of those things. Do you remember, or can you retroactively access the Chalker Roach ownership percentage?
Yeah.
Because I know how
I
feel about him, but I just was wondering how the majority, because he did play so well in his previous game before he got injured. So I don't think it would be extremely low. My guess would be over 10, under 20.
I think it was around 15, but that was still, if you ask me, like far too low for a player who was only 6,600 with that role. He was 18 in the millie, which again, if you consider it here, I have it up now. So Derrick Henry was 27. Just like compare him to his peers, right? And like, and you hit the nail on the head, Andy, about the people are afraid to play a player on their first week back from injury. Because if they weren't, he should have been the most owned running back on the slate, right? This was a 6,600 back in a fantastic matchup that had already carved up this matchup before that literally has a Christian McCaffrey role. So he should have been the most owned running back on the slate, but he wasn't because people are afraid to play people coming off of injury. So he was 18. Pacheco was 23. Taylor was also 18. Derrick Henry was 27 and a half. Ramondre was 15. Rashad White was 18. So he was like right in the mix of everyone, Jerome Ford. Jalen Warren was 22. Jerome Ford was 15. So like, he certainly wasn't outsized. I'll say that.
Okay. I think it would be a natural progression then. You just said a couple names right there, and we're going to get to the monkey in the room. We're going to have to talk about who, Mr. 4600, but we'll do that in a couple minutes. There was a guy who more or less screwed a bunch of people, and Alex, who's editing this for us, on one of his lineups, I helped shuffle off him and put Najee in there, and Jalen Warren, who's returning to us here at 5,400. The reason I got to bring up both of these Steelers guys is one of the reasons I was so excited to play the Chalker Roach. It's that damn Arizona defense. And another thing, I know it sounded crazy, but Kenny Pickett was moving the ball, and if Deontay Johnson doesn't, there were opportunities in that game. Anyway, that's besides the point. Those two running backs, my guess is, even though he had a bad week, my regular guy detector is saying people are going to want to play Warren again. They're going to just chalk that up to a bad week. It was a Najee week. It was unlucky. I think they're more likely to go back to Warren than actually go to Najee Harris. And I just do want to say, by the way, both Royce Freeman and the Chalker Roach had big days because that's how bad it got for Arizona in the running game. So don't be surprised if I don't do a little $3 lineup with both the Pittsburgh running backs in there to differentiate. But these guys are going to have to be people. They have to want to play these two guys.
Yeah, I don't really have too much of a preference between the two. I think they're both great plays at this point. And we mentioned Najee getting the goal line work. Jalen Warren still getting the pass game work. They're playing almost the same amount of snaps. Najee played 38 to Warren's 34, basically to take the entire game between the two. I think Jalen Warren was out for one more passing down play, but he must have ran here. I can get this real quick.
He fumbled early, which may have maybe steered things toward Najee a little, and then Najee actually had a couple good runs, so they stuck with him.
Right.
When
they're
Najee
playing
from ahead, I bet you
Warren had 3 targets. Najee. He ran 15. He had 15 routes. Najee didn't have a target. So certainly you can make an argument for both these guys. I do think that it was way overblown. There was a report that came out on Sunday morning that new offensive coordinator was going to try to get George Pickens more involved, was going to try to get Jalen Warren more involved. And I mean, that had been the fantasy guy narrative all week, but then there was an actual report that came out at 11:30, and that was bullshit because Najee still had more snaps than Warren, and Pickens had the same type of role he's had for 5 straight weeks, which is 5 targets a game, going to get a couple deep shots, and that's it. What did change was, as you mentioned, Pickett was pushing the ball downfield a little bit, but was using the middle of the field, which is great news for Pat Freiermuth, which is pretty good news for Deontay Johnson, and it's good news for the running backs. So, I know you had mentioned kind of sprinkling in Pickett in to one of your, large field lotto teams. Didn't get it done because he wasn't able to find the end zone. That was all went to the running backs. But you were right that he looked much, much better, right? 278 yards, 33 dropbacks. Look at his average yards per completion there, 8.4 compared to the rest of the season. It was paltry, like 4.3, 4.5. So this week, if you want to spend down, especially against Arizona, I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to sprinkle in a Pickett team this week.
What's your cheap wide receiver threshold again? How much money?
So I wrote it this morning, and it's a week, cheap wide receiver week. The way we do it on ETR, it's under 5,000 on DraftKings and under 6,000 on FanDuel. That we talk about FanDuel here, and over 5 projected targets. So it's got to hit those two things together.
So you don't trust that Pickens can get 5 targets?
No, he made the list. He makes the DraftKings only section usually because he projects for like 5.5 targets every week. He gets like exactly 5 targets every week. So it's just a matter of this week compared to last week when they were playing was it the Bengals last week? But this week, especially against the Cardinals, I think there's probably a much better chance of him connecting for a long ball. But the question is, say he even goes 3 for 100 and a touchdown, like, is that enough? Maybe this week compared to last week. Last week was high scoring. I don't know.
You're right. I just there seemed to be some newfound energy in the offense, and
for sure,
Freiermuth was the major benefactor last week. And that may just happen to open a few things up. And he almost connected on a second deep shot. We will see. I mean,
they bumped him way up. I mean, because we said that he was mispriced on his first 2 weeks back, right? He was Stoneman on his first week, and then they only brought him up to 2,900 because he had the one catch. Now DraftKings has done this thing where they've done a little bit this year where, oh shit, this guy broke the slate. We're going to aggressively bring him up. So now he's 4,300, which is not like a free square at all at tight end.
Remember that week where you just kept saying ring around the Rosie? Remember you just kept saying, what was that about again? Do you remember that? You like said something about the Rosie. Do you remember that? It was last season. It was something ring around. Well, I'm doing ring around the running back Rosie because when you were just blasting all those percentages, those were all guys who factored into my game plan when I was looking at a couple of things for this upcoming weekend. Now you saw what Derrick Henry you saw what he did. They actually didn't use him as much as I thought. They play a little bit
what
different.
The hell were they dropping back so much for?
They
were in control of that whole game. Like,
I was getting pissed off. I was getting pissed off.
Derrick Henry had 18 for 76 and 2 touchdowns. And old Mike Vrabel, that would have been a 30 for 140 and 3. It's so
something
weird.
About Levis. It's something about Levis. Because he's got this arm, they feel obligated like he should use it. They just kept throwing on like second and third down. It was just really weird. Anyway, you saw what he was doing to them when given the opportunities, and they apparently have a decent secondary. What they're saying about Rashad White, he's Alvin Kamara without the name. When you look at his utilization and how many receptions he's getting and just all the work that he's actually, he's more of an Alvin Kamara than Alvin Kamara. And last week, he happened to do it on the ground there, 15 for 100 and only had 2 receptions for 20 yards. Did he fall into the end zone last week? He didn't.
No.
But if he did, you're looking at a big damn day from them, and they need a win. This is a good spot to go to him, but I would imagine people are on this one as well.
Are you talking about Henry or White right now?
Right now I'm talking about White. I'm just he's got that Carolina defense.
Yeah, no, because White played the team that Henry's playing this week. So you could talk about both the guys, right? So I think White has become like this super high floor DFS play. So if you're a cash player, which is we are not here to talk about cash, he's like the ultimate guy, plug and play, because they don't jump up his price too much because he hasn't kind of hit those home run games because he hasn't hit on the right side of touchdown variance, except that game against Houston. But we just need to see one of these weeks where he marries the two things. We finally saw an efficient game on the ground. I don't think he's a great runner between the tackles, so I don't think we're going to get 6 yards of carry very often. But we can get 4.2, 4.3. And then if you're going to get your 6 for 50 through the air, just give me one touchdown. And at 6.3, I told you that's your 25 points. That's optimal, right? So I do think he's just fine. I should be pulling up ownership projections. Let's see what he's going to, or an idea.
All right. It's all right.
I'm curious myself. And then the Henry side, though, I think Henry's. We haven't talked about something that I think is an interesting conversation, and that's running back mini correlations, so running back skinny stacks, like I'm iffy on them overall. And yeah, Rashad White's coming through like 28% ownership right now.
Yeah, and I don't doubt that. Don't worry,
Yeah.
guys. I got plenty of other ones for you.
No,
But
anyway, what I was going to say is Derrick
Yeah.
Henry to me this week. Let's see, he is
hey,
only
before you
coming
before you
through.
say before you
Yeah, go
talk
ahead.
about him, there's a reason you're probably seeing what you're seeing. So let's just talk about the monkey in the room. There's no
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor. Zach Moss is in the 4,000s. Everyone
Yep.
and your mother's going to play him. The question is, and I actually still don't know how I feel about this.
Yeah,
I've heard some
56%
people, I think
ownership
some
right
people
now.
from our company say if somebody's over like 58% owned, it's guaranteed a bad play. I still don't
That's not
know if
true.
I buy that.
That's
Like,
not true.
yeah,
We
I know.
saw it last year a bunch of times. You remember how much chalk hit, especially in the middle of the season, especially at running back last year? It's not true. Like Josh Jacobs
I
is the
know.
perfect example last year. He was like 40% owned like 3 weeks in a row, and he hit like 2 of those 3 weeks. And that was a 7,000 player, right? This is a 4-6 player who, before Jonathan Taylor came onto the scene, had a Kieran Williams or Christian McCaffrey role. Not as much through the air, but like an every down,
Look
a
at that
legit every
screen
down
if you're
role.
watching on YouTube. And out of
And we know
curiosity,
we
4
saw last week.
receptions, 2
And
receptions.
look what he did against this exact game in Tennessee, right? That was at home, but still, I mean, 23 for 165, 2, and then 2 for 30. Like,
okay, so in my big
I don't
four,
think it's bad chalk. I think it's fine chalk. I think it's fine.
in my big 4, he's going to be in 2.
I would go 3 probably because 2, you're not getting any leverage. You might as well get leverage.
Oh, Gary sold
55%.
That was that was a soft 2. I mean, you want it, you got that third.
So the way I would do it, I think he's such a good play that I agree. In your big 3, I'd want to keep one open where I fade
big
it.
4.
Yeah, the big 4. Right,
it's
right,
3 in
right,
the power sleep and then the 100. The big 4.
I'd want to do one where I fade it just to keep myself covered. But yeah, I do think. Yeah.
And this is the reason I brought this up, because the guy you had up before, they're playing each other. So that's the whole world playing Moss. And then there's Henry at home against Indianapolis. Indianapolis is one of those teams. Yes, they're above 500. They could pull out these good games. They could also pull out garbage games. And if Tennessee's playing well against them and they're playing from ahead, assuming it's just different, I think, when they played the Panthers couldn't do a damn thing. And I think they were experimenting on offense. They were taking these shots. But if this is a game against a division team here, I would imagine he keeps getting fed. And just imagine every guy on the other side of that game has Zach Moss in their lineup. So if Henry's going wild, he's killing it for you while all those Zach Moss lineups are in that same game. And now they're maybe a little more likely to throw if, the Tennessee's up and whatnot. So I'm just saying, man, if there's not a Moss in your lineup, really think about having Henry in there.
Right, and that's where I was going to get in.
Matchup.
I don't disagree with that at all, and that's where, because he's only 10% owned right now, and Moss is 55 or whatever. And by the way, in small field, so in the 3 max, Moss is going to be closer to like 70, 75. So you're actually really not gaining leverage by playing 3 of them. So if you wanted to just do 2 and take a stand, I'd understand it, but I'd be scared of the fade personally. But the last point I want to take on this game and in this spot is, when do you play them together? Because again, I don't love necessarily.
I can't do it.
The 2 running backs in the same game stack, but when one's 4,600, and both teams want to be, well, maybe not the Titans anymore, like we were just talking about, but historically both teams want to be so run heavy. Well, so if they do want to both be so run heavy, I think they can get there together. But I do also agree that usually Henry is like the full engine of his offense that builds a lead. So perhaps the other team is playing from behind and you're getting away from the Moss team. So I agree that, but you can actually make the argument that it's creating uniqueness in both ways, because I don't think there's going to be that many Moss teams that also have Henry, right? So like, yes, you're playing into the Moss chalk, but the combination with Henry is unique. So something to consider. But I think I more agree with you. I'd rather do it without them, 2 of them together.
There's a big game early, a big game late. These are the ones that people are probably going to circle. So I say we hit them, but then there's going to be some sneaky ones that I'm going to try to sniff out. The first one's obviously going to be Tua at home, Washington. You just saw Dak throw a bunch of touchdowns against them, and people are going to want to play Tyreek Hill. He's chasing 2,000 yards, so it's almost like they're making a distinct effort to get him over 100 every single game. Just so I know in my head, because when you do this, it helps me actually try to build a lineup. His salary is $9,600. How many points roughly do I need from him to be happy?
On this slate, where I don't think there's that much tight end upside or running back upside necessarily, you probably want something in the high 30s at 9.6, like 36, 37. Historically, I would say for all like your average receiver in an optimal lineup, you're looking at like 28 points. At 9.6, you need more than that. So I think 35 plus.
He can do that.
Oh yeah, he's done it a bunch of times.
How we feeling about who, the other guy who we always try to sneak in there, but him and Devontae Smith finally starting to come around. Had 100 in his last game, coming off that bye, fully healthy. How we feeling here in this game?
Yeah, so let's just start here. Like, when you're an offense that can throw the ball and you get the Washington Commanders, you salivate. You start to drool. Like, it's been that kind of it's been the matchup this year, the pinnacle matchup for passing offenses, and they just get beat. And the best part is Sam Howell likes to punch back, and it just makes these games. So last week when the Dolphins were a team total of 30 and we're playing the Raiders and everyone was getting excited, maybe we should have been more into the other side, and if game environment and script and pace could play into it, because again, every week's a new puzzle. Everything's different. We've talked about the week before. It's good, like when the Cowboys beat the Giants by 49-10, it's good to just take the best offense on the slate regardless of the other side. Here, it's like the best of both worlds. So I do not think this is a bad game to attack. I think this is a very good game to attack. I would be shocked if one Dolphin is not optimal this week. I will probably have a min one Dolphin rule in my build. Like, somebody's getting there. Now, the amount of stacks that I do, that's a different story. I think I want plenty of double stacks with Tua. I want plenty of Tua Hill. I want plenty of Tua Waddle. I want Sam Howell with Dolphins bringbacks as a way to get cheaper.
Alex, put Moss in one of the running backs, because I just want to show you. For anybody who's watching on YouTube, for anyone who's listening right now, we have Tua in the quarterback position, Hill and Waddle, and Zach Moss for 4,600. Get ready to see this in 7 million lineups this weekend. So many people are going to start with this exact build. So if you're going to do it, that's cool. Make sure you're sniffing some sneaky ones in these other positions to allow yourself to differentiate from these people. You can't go with but now I can save some with this because Tank Dell isn't playing, so now I'm going to go with, but no, that ain't going to cut them up. You really got to think outside the box, because this, to me, is as chalky as it gets if you're going to start this way.
And that's why I think Sam Howell's had a couple games with 30 points already.
Chalk this way.
So I think a good way to do it. I don't know if you've ever chalked this way before.
Might as well be chalking on the sun. Might as well be chalking. That just came to me. All these times I've thought of episode names, I never thought of that song.
Walking while chalking on sunshine.
Yeah, and they all apply to these Miami Dolphins.
They do. And I just went to take a look at ownership to see if Sam Howell, because he's $1,700 cheaper than Tua, we're just coming through with less ownership. And in fact, he's not on DraftKings right now. I mean, because the value is so good to get exposure to this game. So it's a way to save money. And the way you get unique here is by doing so. What you do with the way you approach this when you take the cheaper quarterback is, obviously you want to stack partner with him. So you want at least one Washington guy in there, but you pretend as if your quarterback's Tua. So you could still do the double, for example, or you still do like two Dolphins on the other side, just because that's a way you get uniqueness. It's like saying, hey, I'm going to need that $1,700, but this game is going to hit, and Sam Howell is going to also get over 30 points. So even if, yes, is it in an ideal situation, I'm able to extract all of the goodness that comes from a Dolphins double stack, sure. But this is a way to approach it as well. And there's some good cheap wide receiver volume guys on Washington.
Yeah. I'd like to offer a suggestion, because I think the first thought someone's going to have is go to Curtis Samuel coming off those 8 catches, or go to Dotson at who are both in the 4,000s. Mm-hmm. I'm going to suggest a little something crazier than that. If you can put Antonio Gibson into the lineup and then show us what he's done because he missed 1 week and he came back last week and he's been catching balls when they're playing catch up. 5 catches, 5 catches. Oh, I'm sorry, 6 catches, 5 catches, 5 catches, 4. Am I looking at targets? I'm sorry. My bad. 3 catches in the last one. It was his first game back. He almost wasn't going to play. But before that, 3 straight games with 5 catches, 16.5 points, 12. Look, all I'm saying is if they're down by a ton, he can be getting some dinks and dunks because they actually have pretty good cornerbacks over there in Miami. It's just something to think about if you're starting with that mega chalk, stack.
I like the sniff. I do. I like the sniff. What probably wasn't even on my radar, but I think running back's kind of ugly this week. I want to be spending down at running back and spending up.
Are you serious about that? In
Yeah,
terms of ownership or?
Oh no, I just think as far as the overall look of the position, I don't love a lot of these guys. There's obviously Moss, and then you got a ton of guys in the 6K that you can attack. But
Moss,
I'm not super excited about. Yeah. There's It's ugly. That's what I'm saying. Your options are cheap. Bijan's a good play. Bijan's a good play. Rashad White's fine, but coming through with a ton of ownership. The top end, you got CMC in Philly. You get Eckler, who's clearly not right. You got Kamara, who maybe is okay because the Saints are so banged up. But these are expensive plays.
If you could pause there for a second.
All I'm saying is that I want to spend up at receiver, so I like having another option in there in Gibson. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, then let me transition this to something because when the week starts to when we film this, I told Gary that I try to make some $1 lineups just so I could see, that's how I was thinking about things like Gibson. And when I'm looking at these games, I'm trying to sniff out the one that people are going to be excited about and potentially let down, and then one that people don't kind of really see as I don't really want to invest in that. What do you want? You want to start with the bust, or you want to go with the maybe sneaky scoring potential?
Start with the bust, and then we'll have the longer conversation on the scoring.
I think we got Houston bust potential. This damn Denver pass defense, this Denver defense, other than the run defense, is making things very tough for opposing quarterbacks. They're playing with a lot of confidence right now. And I can see this weird game where Houston they're having more success on the ground and they're splitting their early down work right now. And I don't think this is going to be one of these back and forths. And I'm not sure that all these Houston guys now, I think something's up in the air with Tank Dell. But if Tank Dell was fine, I feel like Collins and Dell would draw a ton of ownership. And I'm almost willing a reverse Men's Warehouse that not playing them is going to not break your lineup. That's a wacky concept. The reverse Men's Warehouse. You're going to hate the way he looks. I'll guarantee it. But with this game, I'm feeling that it's not going to be one of these Houston games. It's, it depends what's in that witch's brew. The witch's brew. That's what actually makes the ingredients in the witch's brew is what makes it come out. What an idiotic saying to just interject into the middle of this breakdown. All I'm trying to say is I think that Denver game is going to have more opportunity on the Denver side, and I think you're going to get a mishmash of statistics from Houston's offense, which indirectly means I'm playing very little Stroud, if any, this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm have to be super impressed with Denver since that Kansas City game, and even the week before when they got their first ones. I mean, so what? They're on five straight wins for the Broncos or something like that, and they do it kind of ugly, right? They've kind of turned Russell Wilson into this game manager. But the one thing I'll say about this, if there ever is a week to attack Russell Wilson, I think it's this one, right? It's the opposite side of what you're just saying is you're scared off of Stroud for many reasons. Not only the fact that Denver's become a very good defense, particularly through the air, but he's 8,100. Russell Wilson on the other side of this is 57. And if we do get lucky and Stroud just continues his amazing play that I continue to be just in awe of, and he's able to have some success against this defense, then you probably want Russ even more. Because then games going your direction, and we know Sean Payton's going to do exactly what he needs to do to win. So, right, exactly.
Sean Payton is not going to chicken out. If they are passing it successfully, he'll continue to pass it successfully. So I do think that those guys are in play, and he's too cheap to call a Men's Warehouse pick of the week. Everyone's really written him off. Against Minnesota, he was featured and just missed a touchdown to make it a day. And people, they're so eager to just, he's the wide receiver too. I'm going to be playing a ton of 4,600 Jerry Jeudy this week. It's
Yeah, he's
almost
questionable. Is the only question here.
it's because he missed Wednesday practice, but he came back Thursday.
Oh, is he all right?
I'm
Okay,
pretty.
good.
I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure
Tank
he's
Dell,
going to
by
be
the way,
fine.
is also Tank Dell's also fine. So
Good.
yeah, I mean, you got your options in this game. Yeah, I mentioned there's not a lot of great receivers under 5K, so I don't hate that. Has 0 ceiling games this year. It's scary.
I know.
But,
I know,
yeah,
but it goes.
Yeah, but
it goes.
you take the shot. Yeah, I don't mind taking the shot. I definitely don't mind taking the shot. Yeah, so it's I agree that the Houston side has bust potential, but I'm kind of interested in the Broncos stack where the Texans bring back or something like that. I think can be intriguing.
Yes, 100%.
And you can be. I talked about all these options that you want to try to find pivots around Zach Moss. I want to spend down at running back, so you can get into Singletary again. Like they did not feature Dameon Pierce at all. It was like a 45-13 snap split. That's Singletary's backfield right now, and he's 5,900 still. So I don't mind going there as a bring back either. Someone that they'll use through the air too.
So now for the one that I think has sneaky potential, and it's anybody who plays them now. The Detroit Lions have reverted into early last year defense. Everybody is just crushing them. Now, the big problem is we're dealing with check down Carly, as Gary calls him. And, everybody's mostly been staying off Kamara lately. If one of those other two running backs is ruled out again, because I know Kendra Miller, he didn't play last week, and I know it's only Williams there, and we're dealing with all these guys who are potentially out, then I'm going to be playing Kamara. If Olave is playing, you're going to see me have a ton. I know it's going to cost a lot of money. Olave, St. Brown, because Jared Goff is struggling immensely. And when he struggles, he locks on to that guy because he wants the person who's going to get him out of that. You're not going to see many Jamison Williams all over that. That's when Goff is feeling good. But when he's struggling, which he clearly is, a couple of weeks in a row, he is going to hunt this guy down. I mean, last week, he had 9 for 95. He didn't get in the end zone, but had a touchdown in the previous 2 games. You're looking at 11 targets, 9 targets, 9 targets, and there should be no Marshawn Lattimore, so it's not like he's going to be tracking them all over the field. You're going to be able to get them. I think there's going to be points in this game. It's going to be like one of those old school Saints games where you could rely on points in the dome.
Yeah, I really wish Rashid Shaheed was playing because he'd be a great spend down option here in this particular game in the dome. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think, by the way, I think Olave is going to play, and I think Shaheed's going to sit. So that'll probably kind of be where that shakes out. And I don't disagree with your Kamara take either. Again, just my issue is spending up at running back this week. I just don't want to do it. But you can see one of those big games from him though.
If Olave doesn't play, I know you guys are going to think this is crazy. It's not. Juwan Johnson is like 3,600 or something like that. When all those receivers left the game, he drew like 6 targets or something like that. And the check down nature of this quarterback. And so what? He had 7 targets for 4 catches, 45 yards. And that's, with Olave missing only 1 half. If you're looking at a full game with no Shaheed, no Olave, and check down Carly, you can really build yourself something like a Goff St. Brown with Juwan Johnson and Kamara or whatever, something like that.
I mean, Taysom Hill might be really involved this week too if all these guys are out, which is always a scary guy because they price him up as if he's going to go off in one of those big games. But I wouldn't be fully ruling him out at all this week, which is scary in its own right. But
yeah, I'm scared to play him when Juwan Johnson is, because he really killed it when he was playing tight end as well, like every snap. Yep. So he was catching balls, he was running. It's a little, you kind of need that long.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lotto thing. It's a Millie type play. But
I do think there's a lot of potential in that game. The more I look at this, it is a tricky slate because where last week we really kind of knew the few games to really, the way you said you need a Dolphin locked in your lineup.
Yeah.
Last week it was like we knew which 2 were going to be heard from. And then there were
Yeah.
so many dead matchups, so many New England versus the Giants. This is a little trickier. A lot of these can sneak out of nowhere and
Yeah.
provide guys who are going to be in that optimal lineup.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think this is a little bit of a trickier slate. I feel like I had a really good read on last week's slate, and I'm still kind of studying this one to figure out where those sniffs are going to eventually drip down from, if you will.
Yeah.
But I do think this Detroit New Orleans one is certainly one that you could look at. I mean, other games that are probably going to be in play. I guess we should talk about San Francisco, Philly.
Yeah, that's the big late
yeah.
one. That's the
Yeah.
big late one that, this is the 4:00 meal. This is the one where, is it going to be this defensive battle, or are these teams going to be pulling out all the stops and there's going to be plenty of players to be heard from on the slate?
Right.
My first thought in this episode of, is it Debo or Ayuk? It's going to be a little bit of both of them in this game, because the secondary is obviously vulnerable. And I know Shanahan is going to give Debo a bunch of opportunities to try to break one from behind the line of scrimmage as a running back. I just know in big games, they say F it with his health, and they get him the ball and give him opportunities. Had a great game on Thanksgiving. He had a rushing touchdown in that one, close to 100 total yards. I'd be very surprised if they don't use him. And then because of how vulnerable the Eagles are against the tight end, I do feel like Kittle, he's too expensive for me. I just feel like he's not going to have some massive game.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Kittle here. I like Kittle in like this gritty,
I like him too, man,
like
but it's
northeast type game, where it's a good matchup for him coming off a down game. So yeah, I think, and I also think the field's going to have a difficult time getting to him, because you said, because it's a lot. So I don't mind spending up there. If you think about it, like the receivers that he's around, if you try to put him in the same tier, like he's around, Debo Samuel, and he's cheaper than Adam Thielen, and he's, around Amari Cooper and Garrett Wilson, and like guys that when it all clicks, I think he's got as good of a ceiling, if not better, than a lot of those guys. So I like Kittle quite a bit. If I am spending up at tight end, I probably want it to be Kittle or Laporta if you want to attack that New Orleans Detroit game. And then if not, I probably want to start heading down the value streets. I mean, Trey McBride's a guy that we've really enjoyed with this full point PPR, but he's up to 5K now. And going into Pittsburgh with the questionable tag now, that's not something that I love to necessarily attack.
Really, for me, it's just hard to not include him in some stuff because of how many targets he draws. And I just feel like scared Kyler wants to get it out of his hand and throw it right to the tight end. It's just, 9 targets, 7 targets, 9 targets. It's just hard to say no to that.
I think he's definitely my favorite of the mid tier. Like if I'm not attacking Kittle, and I'm not going down to like Juwan Johnson and below that or whatever, I do think that he's my favorite there. But now this Q tag popped up today, right? He was limited today with a groin injury. That's always scary. At least they dumped Ertz finally, and they were like, we're not gonna let that guy go out and have 11 targets. Fucking ridiculous.
Tough question. If Achane plays, what do you do?
Yeah, it's a really tough question. What are the prices on those 3 guys? Man, I think what you do with Mostert, and Mostert's also questionable, right?
Oh, well, he's the classic old guy you don't have to practice early in the week. He's missed every Wednesday. And
if there's any chance one of those 3 misses, I think Jeff Wilson's an excellent pivot to Zach Moss at the exact same price. He finally got utilized last week. But if the 2 of them are in, that's a hard sell. I think what you do is I just mix and match them with my correlation stuff. So that includes double stacks. As one-off plays, I'd so much rather attack Washington through the air. And I get that those guys could be a part of it. Maybe they get lucky with touchdown variants, like we've seen with Mostert all year, where they get down to the 5 or the 6 or the whatever, and he runs it in. But I think the way I'd include it is, how I'm a big proponent of stacking running backs with quarterbacks, especially on an offense like this, especially when a team's projected to score a lot of points. So I think I would just kind of sprinkle them in with my Tua and Sam Howell stacks. And as one-off plays, I'd kind of be limited this particular week.
All right, and then there are two other late games. So many times you'll see everyone circle the late game like San Fran and the Eagles, and then all of a sudden, at a left field, you're seeing yourself go down in the standings. And why is that? Because Jerome Ford just went for an 80-yard touchdown. You think there could be any potential like that in this Rams game? Now, as the resident Chalker-Roach supporter, I'll tell you when to hold them, and I'll tell you when to fold them. This is not ideal Chalker-Roach conditions. It's not. I'm happy to tell you. Look, he's gonna get those screen. And by the way, the exact plays I told you they were gonna use around the goal line, those goal line running back screens, they did like 3 of them, and 1 went for a touchdown. He's gonna have good pass game usage. It's just that's not where you don't want to be using the Chalker-Roach against tough fronts like that. You just don't. That's not his style.
Listen, I'll concede to all Chalker-Roach opinions for you, Andy. Yeah, and I think I would agree, right? If you look historically at the Browns and how they've done against the run, the Broncos guys last week didn't really have too much success, if I recall.
And that was playing with a huge lead where they can commit to it. Like Javonte had, I think, like 20 carries and couldn't break.
Yeah,
like
he had
80
18 carries and it was like 3.6 yards per carry. You know, a little bit more success for Samaje Perine, but that's just because of the threat of the pass when he's on the field. So yeah, I think I agree with that. He'd still make my player pool if I was doing most mass entry. But yeah, it's not like the same, not the same spot as last week for sure.
Yeah, definitely not.
And then
also,
yeah,
everybody's excited about him. He's the guy who, who cashed everyone last week, so people are going to be happy. I mean, there always is the potential that this could be a week where you actually see them use that quick passing game. I would not be surprised at all.
No, I agree. I like the San Francisco side overall. I know I didn't really comment on that. I think because we've been seeing teams just being able to absolutely cruise on Philly. What do you make of that spread though? San Francisco going in there as favorites is freaking weird, man. I get that they're probably the best team in the league right now, but it's really strange.
The way I look at it is, I think it's just human psychology to not like you have a 2-game or a 1-game cushion, a 1.5 game cushion on all these other teams. And you've seen that from the Eagles. Like the Eagles looked pretty bad for the majority of the game against Kansas City and for the majority of the game against Buffalo. And to me, it just looks like a team who doesn't need it. They don't they don't, if they lose, they're in the same exact position as if, they didn't. And it's just hard to amp yourself up. Meanwhile, San Fran was coming off that bye, 3 straight losses. They're fading out of the picture. They're looking at Seattle above them in the standings, just motivation out the ass. So I'm not surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles, one of these games, it's not going to be, oh, they win in spite of it. One of these games, they're going to show up from the opening whistle, and it ain't going to be fun for the other team.
Right, exactly.
Somebody was asking, like, I just can't see, like, when you look at the matchups on offense, like, or on defense for the Niners, it's Lane Johnson's probably going to come back. And if they run the ball and they just do a bunch of, classic Jalen Hurts, and they're able to gash him a little bit in the run game, and he's able to do some option stuff. If the defensive line tears up the game, that could end it for the Niners. Like, they have a mid-tier offensive line, and when Trent Williams was out, it was highly exposed. But it gets a little bit protected by the scheme that they run, and then when Williams is in there. But if that line engulfs the Niners line, the game will be ruckus. Like,
right.
The Eagles can do it because they have a good defensive line. The question is, if Purdy can just stand there like he did against the Cowboys, then I'm sure he will be able to complete them. But Philly's a crusty place to play, man.
Oh,
it's a crusty
totally.
place to play.
That place is going to be freaking raucous in the 4:00 hour with
biggest carnies you ever seen in your life are going to be there. All Smoker's voice. You have to have Smoker's voice to be let in. Everyone.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they're underdogs at home, like, people are, they're taking that seriously. They're going to be fucking nightmares, those Philly fans. But yeah, I don't know. Purdy should be on the radar though, just because we've seen so much success passing against Philly this year. And yeah, man, I don't know. It's
And just McCaffrey, like
yeah,
he's matchup proof though, right?
he is. Yeah, he's matchup proof. So that's if you want to spend up at running back, to me, that's the place to do it. And then you just find some of your cheap receiver plays, right? Your 5Ks, your Josh Downs of the world again, and plays like that or whatever. It's just not as great. Last week I had like 15 guys on the cheap wide receiver volume article, and a bunch of them were big time plays. This week there's like 6 or 7, so it's not the same type of value slate for sure.
I
Not
can
at all.
really use Dallas Goddard coming back, because if that happens, then I can make a Purdy, McCaffrey, Debo with Goddard. But without him, it's just too much ruckus trying to go with and early in the week they said he was shooting for it, but now it looks a little more depressing. The news seems a little more depressing. So I don't know if he's going to be able to play. Let me see.
Yeah,
Was held out of practice.
yeah. I don't know if
Someone
it's gonna happen
got
for
him
him.
spotted catching passes on the side. He intended to push towards returning to action this weekend. Yeah, that's what I guess we will see. We will see. But if he does play, I'm not going to be scared. I'll use him.
Yeah, I
If
think
he
you have
plays.
to. I think you have to if he plays.
And I do got to say, man, as far as the men's warehouse pick of the week,
Yeah, let's do it. You have
is
someone in
there
mind?
any? How about you?
Yeah, I'll go first if you want. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go. So I'm choosing between which of the two guys to pick here. Because I want to attack that same Chalker Roach spot. I really like the way that the Pittsburgh running back room is shaking out right now. And I know exactly where I'm going to go, because one guy's coming through with 16% ownership again. And one guy just came off a 15 for 99 week, which was a yard away from the bonus, and found the end zone, and is cheaper, and is coming through with only 7% ownership. So I can't believe I'm doing it. Give me Najee Harris
You're doing it. You're doing it.
as my men's warehouse pick of the week. Not doing a ton through the pass game, despite this is a guy that caught like 80 balls 2 years ago. So we know we can still do it. And look, I mean, 4 of the last 5 games been over 4 yards a carry. 3 of the last 2, that was not English. 2 of the last 3 between 5 and 6, and that's with real volume. That's not like with 8, 7 carries. So I'm not a huge believer in the talent. Still gets the stuff around the goal line. I think this is a much more efficient offense.
Look at that column that says long. I saw that he leads the league in runs of like 15 plus yards,
which is the exact opposite of what we thought he was, right, coming into the season. So, yeah, it's weird, it's ugly, but it's somehow falling through the cracks again. Everyone loves Jaylen Warren, and welcome to the bandwagon. I've been on it for like 2 years, but I'm gonna take a temporary leave from the bandwagon to go over to Najee this week, and he's gonna like the way he looks in his fresh suit when I go join him.
Well, you guys are gonna be. You're gonna say, "Oh, this guy just thinks he's on top of the world now." I'm trying to think of something outside of this, but it's what my heart feels, and I truly think that one of my favorite plays on the slate, when you include the price and everything, I know. My men's warehouse pick of the week is a guy who Gary said hasn't had a single ceiling game. So that's me telling you, I'm trying to predict his first ceiling game. My men's warehouse pick of the week is Jerry Jeudy on the Broncos. Now, yes, this falls into Claritin sniff territory, but the way you beat Houston, I mean, they're just so vulnerable through the air, and they still have 2 guys catching passes. And if you were to watch the tape from Minnesota when they were moving the ball a little bit, I know that they can still feature this guy, and they know his ability still. They gave a bunch of plays that were designed for him. Cortland Sutton, it just seems like when there's improv, it's going to Sutton. But a lot of these designed plays are for Jeudy. And if there's one team and one dome indoor where they'll be able to throw and he'll be able to get his and get into the end zone, it's going to be this game. I'm going with Jerry Jeudy of the Broncos, who hasn't had a huge week yet, as my men's warehouse pick of the week. That's just what's out there for me. You're going to like the way this unique looking suit fits. I guarantee it.
That is bold. It is bold.
It's
But
it's
you know
it's
what?
just what's in my heart.
And there's nothing you can do but trust your heart and your nose, right, Andy? That's
For
it.
real, man. I keep thinking like, no, we'll give them something more in that tier of. I don't know why. That's where I'm going with so many. He's going to be in so many of my lineups this week, and if it flames out, oh well. But you'll know when the next Chalk or Roach one comes in. I'll have something for you because there's a lot on this slate that I feel good about in terms of the games. Like I told you about the Detroit one, I'm not going to sit here and say Amon-Ra St. Brown's my men's warehouse or
Right.
Kamara. It's just not worth it. But interesting to see how this one goes. I do think this one will favor a little bit more of the Willy Wonkas out there. The more games that
Yeah.
you can cross off your list, that's helpful to the Charles out there. The Charles buckets the first. But when you have a full slate like this, like you're right there, you're just passing Puka Nakua. He could be a great play this week at
Yeah.
7,000.
He
You
very well
need a
could.
touch
I
of
mean,
him in your lot.
it seems like Cooper Cup is cooked right now. It really does. It's unfortunate. But he's impossible to trust. But yeah, I agree. You know, it's a lot of interesting names. By the way, I'm on the Samuel bandwagon as my favorite Washington bring back. I think he's leading the team in targets per route run, and I'm surprised actually that he's only coming through right now with like
They're playing him.
7%
I
ownership.
talked
Right
to
now.
the regular guys. They're playing him. They watched on Thanksgiving.
You
The
had the
regular
meeting.
guys watched on Thanksgiving, and their friends, their
You
girlfriends watched on Thanksgiving.
You held the regular guy the forum, and that's
Yeah,
what they came
we
back
have a
with.
summit, the regular guy summit, where everybody shows up. Hello, sir, and they shake hands.
Oh
Well,
man,
I talked to those guys, and they watched on Thanksgiving, and they loved what they saw out of Curtis Samuel. Is this just a lost year for Terry McLaurin? He's just bad,
yes,
or what's going on?
yeah, I think it is. I don't think he has chemistry with Sam Howell. I really don't. And all the underlying stuff, he's just average. He's just an average NFL receiver right now. That's kind of where we're at. You know, he had 11 targets on Thanksgiving. You like to see that, but he dropped back like 48 times. So he's had a couple of big target games, right? Against Philly, he had 12 targets. He had 11 targets against Atlanta, 11 targets against Dallas. But he's not breaking through, man. Not only one game of 20 DraftKings points, and that was just a pure like compiler game. That was an 8 for 86, right? So it's not even like
better than Judy.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, I'm not giving up on McLaurin. I would still have him in my pool and probably lock him in with a Dolphin. Well, I said I'm probably playing a Dolphin in every lineup, so these guys are naturally going to get locked in with Dolphins. But yeah, I think I do think that he's probably my least favorite of the three this week, just because of this. I want to save the money on the other two.
Yeah,
you can go Logan Thomas though too. Again, I guess right. Like he's been really steady. It's so ugly. I don't like Logan Thomas. I have some personal bias against his ability, but he's still only 3,600. Yeah, I don't know. He's three games over double-digit points.
I do think this might be an AJ Brown week.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a squeaky wheel narrative there, right? Where it's like,
well, it can only be him or Devontae Smith. There aren't other options.
That. We do, you know, if Goddard's not back, especially, we love a nice condensed offense, right? That's kind of like a fantasy player's best friend, right? So that's what like if the Raiders, for example, had a competent quarterback and offensive line, et cetera, they'd be a great offense to attack every week because we know exactly where it goes. That's why the Dolphins, a traditional Dolphins double stack makes sense because they does not throw to somebody that is not named Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. So
that's
great. When you have that very specific situation, and that's why the 49ers are so damn hard to figure out. Because when, for example, you call the Debo week, you were pretty much right. But when Debo has, and I think Levitan made this point on his podcast this week, and it was a good point. When he has 4 rushes and 9 targets or something like that, it's so hard for even one of McCaffrey, Ayuk, or Kittle to get there because he's so efficient with that usage. And usually, if he has 8 catches, a lot of those are big plays, and then you're taking the team off the field soon, right? So it's like it's hard to figure that out with that team when there's 4 guys that can really be all part of the passing offense.
From what I've seen, if I can give you my Shanahan theory from what I've seen through the years, when they play fronts that they're worried are going to engulf their line, they have a ton of scripted for Debo because he doesn't have to think about, like, he doesn't have to drop back and potentially get massacred. So they use Debo on a ton of sweeps and motions, even if they're doing it just to keep the line off balance. And they're also giving him screens and whatnot. When they play soft-ass teams where they trust that Purdy can just sit back and survey the defense, some Tampa Bay Bucks kind of stuff, then usually you're going to see minimal involvement from Debo, and you're going to see Ayuk usually tear it up. But I guess in simpleton's terms, when you see a very good defense, think Debo. When you see a soft defense, think Ayuk. In simple terms, in extremely simple terms. But when they don't,
I think there's some more that you could dive in there with like man versus press with those two guys too, which we don't need to get into now.
No. Well, in fact, we need to get out of here. So we'll be back with you next week. Good luck to all you guys. It's a little bit of a wow. Enjoy it. There's only this week and next week, and then it's Willy Wonka's time. It's the last bye weeks, so enjoy it. If you're like me and have that golden ticket out there and don't have as many as all the pros out there. So good luck to you guys. We'll see you next week. Thanks for coming back. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel here or wherever you listen to it on your all favorite audio platforms. Take it easy.
Subscription is fucking Iborg. Read it. Magazine subscription as Iborg. As magazine subscription as Iborg. Fucking chalk.